What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another one of our game recaps. This will be for Sunday, Christmas Eve, December 24th. Full slate of Sunday games here. The first one we're going to look at is the Browns and the Texans. The Browns pulled this one out 36-22. No CJ Stroud in this one, so it was kind of an alternating quarterback situation. It was a little weird to watch. Joe Flacco for the Browns, he was 27 of 42, 368 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He also had 2 carries for 1 yard. This is what he's been doing all year, just adding up yards and touchdowns. They have the Jets next week, and that's a pretty tough matchup. But the way Flacco's playing, I could totally understand starting him. Chances are, if you're in the finals right now, you're probably not in a horrible place at quarterback, but if for whatever reason, like an unexpected injury or whatever the case may be, if you get stuck in a really bad situation, I think Flacco's a decent option. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, he came in. He was just 1 of 2 for 6 yards. He went down with an injury, though. He also had 1 carry for -5. Jerome Ford, 15 carries for 25 yards and a rushing touchdown. He also had 1 catch for -2 yards on 2 targets. Not a huge day from him, but he did get that touchdown on the ground, though, so that was good to see. It's interesting, too, because Kareem Hunt, he also had a rushing touchdown. He's usually the only one who gets these rushing touchdowns, and Jerome Ford usually has more going through the passing game, but that was not the case today, as both of these guys had rushing touchdowns. Kareem Hunt, 7 of 11, had the rushing touchdown. He had 2 catches for 5 yards, too, so him and Ford kind of alternating spots here as far as, like, who's dominating the ground game and who's getting the receiving work. Pierre Strong, he had 5 carries for 22 yards. He's going to be an interesting dynasty play next year, I think. So just something to keep in mind going forward. Amari Cooper, he went absolutely insane. 11 catches, 265 yards, 2 touchdowns, 15 targets. This is obviously ridiculous, and he probably won your week solely. He probably won your week completely on his own. That's 50 fantasy points, over 50 fantasy points. But next week, he has the number 1 defense against receivers. So you have to play him after he gets you 50 points. That's for sure. But if you're in just a crazy loaded spot, I could see a situation where you don't play Amari Cooper. It's going to be really hard, but the matchup is so bad next week. And the Jets look pretty revitalized after their big win this week. The Commanders almost came back and beat them. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond to that game. If they're still going to fight like they did that first half, or if they're just going to roll over and let the Browns beat them, because the Browns look really good. They've just been playing really well with Joe Flacco under center. 6 catches for 44 yards and a touchdown for David Njoku on 9 targets. He's another one. Just great chemistry with Joe Flacco. The Jets are a great tight end defense, or a great defense to play your tight ends against because they're so weak against tight ends. That's how their defense works. They're so great outside that they force teams to throw inside, and David Njoku can really flourish in that. So he's going to be a great play next week. Elijah Moore, 2 catches for 19 yards and 4 targets. He's a pretty safe drop. I don't think we should be playing him next week. Jordan Akins, he had 2 catches for 18 yards on 2 targets. Cedric Tillman, he had 2 catches for 13. Harrison Bryant, he had a catch for 6. David Bell had a catch for 6 as well. I think those guys you can leave on the wire. A lot of people like David Bell in Dynasty, but I'm not quite there with him. Marquise Goodwin didn't haul in his only target, and Pierre Strong didn't haul in his only target. For the Texans, like I said earlier, really weird quarterback situation going on here. Davis Mills, he had most of the work, but him and Case Keenum kind of alternated. Keenum really struggled in this one too. It was a tough matchup, and it really showed with how Keenum played. Davis Mills was okay though. 15 of 32, 149 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He also had 2 carries for 9 yards. If CJ Stroud continues to miss with this concussion, my guess is it's going to be Davis Mills next week, but that's going to be something to watch, especially how that affects the rest of the receivers going forward. Case Keenum, he was 11 of 17 for 62 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He didn't have any work on the ground in this one, so he's a very safe drop in my opinion. The Texans, let's see who they have next week. The Texans have the Titans next week. That's a pretty good or a soft pass defense. So if you play David, like I wouldn't play Davis Mills outside of like desperate super flex situations because Davis Mills has shown in the past that he's just not that guy. Devin Singletary, 9 carries, 44 yards. He also had 3 catches for 19. He is definitely the back you want to play in the Texans right now, or on the Texans. The Titans are a pretty tough run defense, but with Jeffrey Simmons out, that could clear the way for Devin Singletary to have a decent game. Dameon Pierce, 3 carries for 6 yards, but he also had a kickoff return touchdown and a catch for 10 yards, so an okay game from him, but still. It's going to be interesting to see if people in Dynasty hang on to him because, like with Devin Singletary taking over like this, it wouldn't shock me if the Texans drafted a running back this year. Dare Ogunbowale, he had just 1 carry for 6 yards. He didn't haul in either of his 3 targets either, or any of his 3 targets, so we can leave him on the wire. Robert Woods, he had a carry for 7 yards, also had 2 catches for 14. 6 targets, though, is a lot, so that's something to keep in mind, but I still wouldn't trust him, even in a nice matchup next week against the Titans. Dalton Schultz, he was the leading receiver in this one, 8 catches, 61 yards on 11 targets. I think that's going to be the position that Davis Mills can affect the most, is I think he's going to throw to the tight end a bunch, so look out for that if he starts next week. Noah Brown, he had 3 catches for 38 yards on 7 targets. Again, with the weak matchup next week, maybe, but chances are if you're in the finals, you have better options there. Brevin Jordan, he had 2 catches for 27. That just kind of further emphasizes how much they use tight ends in this game. Nico Collins, 4 catches, 18 yards, and a receiving touchdown. If CJ Stroud is back next week, we're definitely playing him, but it's a little murkier if Davis Mills is out there. Xavier Hutchinson had a catch for 18 on 2 targets. Andrew Beck, the backup tight end, he had a receiving touchdown, but only 2 catches on 6 yards. And John Mechie, still not able to haul in any of his 3 targets. He's had a pretty disappointing year this season. Next game we're going to look at is the Commanders and the Jets. This one was really wild. The Jets looked incredible the first half, and then the second half, it was the complete opposite. So Jacoby Brissett looked tremendous. Surely the Commanders will stick with Jacoby Brissett the rest of the season because Sam Howell looked terrible and Jacoby Brissett looked really good, leading the comeback. This is 2 weeks in a row he looked good. 10 of 13, 100 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions. He also had a carry for 10 yards. Really good stuff from him. He's absolutely an option next week, especially in Superflex formats. He has the 49ers, which is a tough defense. But I will say they give up some yards to receivers, so there's a chance that Jacoby Brissett and Terry McLaurin could connect for some good yardage in that one. But again, we don't want to trust Jacoby Brissett in outside of like Superflex formats, for example. Sam Howell, he had 6 catches for 22 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. It looked absolutely horrible for him, so I would drop Sam Howell. I do not think he is a starting quarterback long-term in the NFL. Chris Rodriguez looked good, though. 10 carries, 58 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. He also had a catch for 7 yards. Really good. I think Dynasty, that's where Chris Rodriguez is going to be valuable. It's going to be interesting to see when Brian Robinson comes back, if they start to work Chris Rodriguez in a little bit more, because he has played pretty well without Robinson. So look out for that when Robinson comes back, especially as he's working back from injury. They may use Chris Rodriguez. So interesting stuff with Rodriguez. Antonio Gibson, 9 carries, 30 yards, and a rushing touchdown. He also had a catch for 2 yards. Not as much passing game work as we're used to with him. So I think he's a safe drop, even though, and they're playing the 49ers next week, so that's going to be a tough matchup for him. We can leave Antonio Gibson on the wire. Curtis Samuel, he had 2 carries for 4 yards. He also had just 1 catch for 16. 6 targets, though, is something to look out for because that's the leading targets he tied with Logan Thomas in this one. So he was getting opportunities, but just wasn't able to make the most of them this week. Frustrating because he had a string of games there where he was playing really well. Terry McLaurin, 3 catches, 50 yards on 5 targets. He's going to be the main beneficiary from Jacoby Brissett taking over, I believe. Logan Thomas, 5 catches, 36 yards, and a receiving touchdown for him. Also had the lead in targets. Jahan Dotson, 2 catches for 31 yards on 4 targets. I think we can leave him on the wire. If you need a spot on your bench for whatever reason, I think we drop Jahan Dotson for that. John Bates, 3 catches for 14 yards on 5 targets. Jameson Crowder wasn't able to haul in his target, and Byron Pringle wasn't able to haul in either of his targets. For the Jets, Trevor Siemian, 27 to 49, 217 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. He also had 4 carries for 18 yards. This was his best game as a Jet. It's going to be interesting to see how he plays next week. Obviously, he's not in this team's future plans whatsoever, but still, it's kind of interesting to see him start to figure it out little by little as he gets more opportunities this year. Breece Hall, 20 carries, 95 yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. He was also the team's leading receiver with 12 catches and 96 yards on 16 targets. Ridiculous stuff. Got to play Breece Hall next week. Let's see who they're playing. They are playing They got the Browns. So a much easier run defense than they are a pass defense. So I would absolutely play Breece Hall next week. Israel Abanikanda, 9 carries, 43 yards. He didn't have any receiving work, but good to see him get a little bit more touches in this one. I think he has a really solid future with his team, a very good dynasty asset, I think. Trevor Siemian, 4 carries for 18 yards. Xavier Gibson, he had a carry for 16, also had just 1 catch for 1 yard. Tyler Conklin, he had a carry for 0 yards, also had 4 catches for 36 yards on 7 targets. Interesting tight end option with the Browns coming up. Garrett Wilson, he had a carry for -8 yards. He also had 9 catches for 76 yards, 15 targets. Crazy stuff. I think, this doesn't make me more comfortable in Trevor Siemian. It just goes to show you that the Commanders are such a bad defense. They can make anybody, including Trevor Siemian, look competent. So I would not be jumping to conclusions just yet about Garrett Wilson and Trevor Siemian based off of this performance in particular. Jason Brownlee, he had a catch for 8 yards and a receiving touchdown. Good to see him get some work there. Alan Lazard wasn't able to haul in his only target, and Kenny Yeboah, Kenny Yeboah, he was not able to haul in his only target either. So really weird game there for the Jets and the Commanders. Next game is the Seahawks and the Titans. The Seahawks pulled this one out 20-17. Geno Smith coming back from injury, 25 of 36, 227 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He also had a carry for 2 yards. It really just depends on the matchup with Geno Smith, and he has the Steelers next week, which isn't the best matchup, but it isn't the worst either. So I could definitely see you potentially starting Geno Smith next week. Kenneth Walker, he had 16 carries for 54 yards. He also had a catch for 2. Kind of just further emphasizing that this is totally his backfield because Zach Charbonnet, he had 2 carries for 0 yards and a catch for -4. So didn't do a whole lot with the opportunities he had. And DJ Dallas, he had a carry for 2 yards and no receiving work. So this is 100% the Ken Walker show in the Seattle Seahawks backfield. Tyler Lockett, he was great. 8 catches, 81 yards on 11 targets. He's going to be up and down, but this is one of the ups for sure. Jackson Smith-Njigba also going to be up and down, but 6 catches, 61 yards, and 7 targets is going to get it done. DK Metcalf, he had 4 catches for 56 yards. The receiving touchdown really helped out his day. Not a whole lot of targets here. He is still the number 1 receiver here. And the Steelers, they don't have the best pass defense, especially against receivers, so I think Metcalf is still going to be a start this coming week. Colby Parkinson, 3 catches for 17 yards and a receiving touchdown. Jake Bobo, he had a catch for 8. Will Dissly, he had a catch for 6. And Charbonnet and Ken Walker just having 1 catch apiece. For the Titans, no Will Levis in this one, so it was all Ryan Tannehill. He was 18 of 26, 152 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. He also had 2 carries for 37 yards. We are not rostering Ryan Tannehill, even if they have the best matchup whatsoever. They have the Texans next week, which is a very good matchup, but I still would not be playing Ryan Tannehill or Will Levis, really, for that matter. Derrick Henry, how about him getting the only passing touchdown for the Titans? 1 of 1 for 12 yards and a passing touchdown. He also had 19 carries for 88 yards and a rushing touchdown. He's going to be a really good play next week. He also had a catch for 11 yards. Tyjae Spears is coming on, but this is still going to be Derrick Henry's backfield. At the very least, he is going to get all the goal line work, so make sure Derrick Henry is in your lineups this coming week. Tyjae Spears is really good, though. 9 carries, 40 yards. He also had 5 catches for 27 on 6 targets. Tied for the lead in targets with Chigo Okonkwo. a very fringe play, I think, Tyjae Spears is, because he needs this like extraordinary receiving work to really bring his value up while Derrick Henry is there. Chico Okonkwo, this was his best game of the season. 6 catches, 63 yards, and a receiving touchdown. Awesome stuff here. Even though they have a good matchup next week, I still would be trying to find better tight ends than Chico Okonkwo because it just hasn't really been good until this game. This was his first game above 10 fantasy points this season. Treylon Burks, he had 2 catches for 25 yards on 3 targets. He also had a carry for -3. He's more of a dynasty play. DeAndre Hopkins, this is where it gets really weird. 2 catches, 20 yards on 4 targets. He's super up and down, and it's going to be hard to predict. He doesn't quite have the floor that like Gabe Davis does, but this is what the floor looks like. 4 fantasy points. That is not going to get it done. Even though they have a good matchup next week, I would still be, kind of just be conscious that it could go bad if you end up playing DeAndre Hopkins next week, even in a good matchup. Chris Moore, he had a catch for 9. Mason Kinsey, he had a catch for 6. And Colton Dowell, he had a catch for 3 yards. Next game is the Falcons and the Colts. The Falcons pulled this one out 29-10. Gardner Minshew was 20 of 37, 201 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception. No rushing work for him either. This offense really needs Michael Pittman to get going, I guess, because they just Gardner Minshew was not able to get anything going down the field, and it absolutely showed. They got, run out of the stadium by a team that just lost to the Panthers. So not good stuff here for the Colts. Jonathan Taylor, 18 carries, 43 yards, and a rushing touchdown. Wasn't able to haul in his only target. The rushing touchdown saved his day there. Even though, this wasn't a great game for Jonathan Taylor, the Colts had the Raiders next week, and that's a pretty easy matchup for a running back. So I would still be playing Jonathan Taylor. Tyler Goodson, he had a carry for 15 yards, also had a catch for 15 yards. Interesting stuff there. Trey Sermon, he had 2 carries for 3 yards. So this is 100% the Jonathan Taylor show. Kylan Granson, so the tight ends got involved here with Michael Pittman out. Kylan Granson, 5 catches, 62 yards on 7 targets. Will Mallory also had 4 catches for 47 yards on 4 targets. I would not be adding any Colts tight end. Even though they have the Raiders next week, I still, the Colts change out their tight ends. 1 week it's this guy leading, the next week it's this guy. Here in this game, it just kind of worked out that the tight ends were able to get all the yards. So I just kind of think that's more of a fluke than anything else. Josh Downs, 6 catches, 39 yards on 9 targets. Good to see him at least get back into the receiving game, or like adding up catches the way he used to at the beginning of the year with Michael Pittman out. That's something to note going into next week. Alec Pierce, he was the clear second receiver, at least as far as wideouts are concerned. He had 3 catches for 30 yards on 7 targets. DJ Montgomery had a catch for 8, and Mo Alley Cox was not able to haul in his only target. Taylor Heineke came in for the bench Desmond Ridder. He was 23 of 33, 229 yards, and a passing touchdown. He also had 2 carries for 10 yards. I really like him as a real-life quarterback, but as far as fantasy is concerned, I do not really trust Taylor Heineke at all. I do think with the Bears next week, that's an okay matchup. So, I would just be looking elsewhere for quarterbacks. Bijan Robinson, good to see him get back into the fold. 12 carries for 72 yards. He was also the leading receiver by quite a bit, actually, with 10 targets. Not so much with yards, but 7 catches, 50 yards, 10 targets. That absolutely gets it done. The Bears, so-so matchup. You still got to play Bijan Robinson because he's been that good. Tyler Algier, though, kind of helping out Arthur Smith's case here, playing too much Tyler Algier. So that's something to be wary of if you're playing Bijan. Like you have been all season, really. Tyler Algier, 9 carries, 69 yards, and a rushing touchdown. Really good stuff there. He also had a catch for 19 yards. So I would still leave Tyler Algier on the wire, but that's still something to note. Cordell Patterson, 7 carries, but only 26 yards for him. 2 catches for 7 yards. Interesting stuff there that he's getting more involved. Also interesting that, they create a position just for him. He's the Joker, but they haven't really done a whole lot with that Joker role. So something to keep in mind with Arthur Smith offenses moving forward. Kyle Pitts, 3 catches, 49 yards, and a receiving touchdown. He's definitely the tight end you want to roster, but with the Bears coming up, it's a okay matchup. Playing Kyle Pitts isn't the worst thing in the world, honestly. Drake London, 3 catches, 39 yards on 4 targets. He's going to be super up and down, so just kind of understand what you're in for with playing Drake London. Kind of similar to DeAndre Hopkins. Jonnu Smith, I think you can leave him on the wire. 4 catches, 32 yards. 6 targets, though, is definitely worth noting. Scotty Miller, he had a catch for 15 yards. Van Jefferson had a catch for 13. And Kadero Hodge had a catch for 5 yards. Next game, the Packers squeezed one out against the Panthers, 33-30. Jordan Love was 17-28, 219 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He also had 2 carries for 12 yards and a rushing touchdown. Jordan Love, he's been very down the middle this entire year. Playing Jordan Love next week wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. They have the Vikings. It's a decent matchup for quarterbacks too. So Jordan Love absolutely in starting consideration for the championship. Aaron Jones with A.J. Dillon hurt a little bit from that thumb injury. It was a surprise to see him play, honestly, but Aaron Jones got some more work because of that. 21 carries for 127 yards for Jones. Only 1 catch for 8 yards, but that rushing work is phenomenal. I would just expect that those carries to go down a little bit as A.J. Dillon gets healthier. Dillon, he had 7 carries for 12 yards. Added a rushing touchdown, though. No catches for him, probably because of that broken thumb. Bell Melton, he had a carry for 7 yards. He also had 4 catches for 44 yards on 6 targets, tying for the lead in targets. It's just crazy stuff. That's just the state of affairs for the Packers passing offense right now. No Jaden Reed, no Christian Watson in this one. So Romeo Doubs, 4 catches, 79 yards, and a receiving touchdown. This is the game we have been waiting for Romeo. Awesome to see that there. They're playing the Vikings next week, so if there's no Christian Watson and Jaden Reed again, Romeo is absolutely in the starting conversation. Tucker Kraft, another guy who's in the starting conversation, 4 catches for 60 yards on 6 targets. He's really stepped up with Luke Musgrave out. Dontavian Wicks, super disappointing here, but the touchdown saved his day a little bit. 2 catches, 29 yards, and a receiving touchdown for him. Samari Toure wasn't able to haul in either of his targets. Malik Heath wasn't able to haul in his target. And Patrick Taylor had just 1 catch for -1 yards. Bryce Young, arguably his best game as a pro, 23-36, 312 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He also had 4 carries for 17 yards. Awesome stuff for Bryce Young. It's like I've been saying all year. Bryce Young is a phenomenal dynasty asset, and you could probably get him on the cheap now because he has sucked this year. So definitely in dynasty, I would be targeting Bryce Young in trades as far as buy lows are concerned. The rest of the way, Chuba Hubbard, he had 16 carries for 43 yards. Also had 1 catch for 8 yards. They have the Jaguars next week, so that's a pretty decent matchup for Chuba, and it's clearly his backfield. Amir Smith-Marset, he had 2 carries for 33 yards and a rushing touchdown. He also had a catch for 18. Miles Sanders, 3 carries, 3 yards, not really helping his case to get more touches. 1 catch for 5 yards, so safely leave him on the wire. Chuba Hubbard is really the only Panthers player, aside from Adam Thielen, that we want to be targeting here. DJ Chark, 6 catches, 98 yards, 2 receiving touchdowns, and 8 targets. This is what DJ Chark does every year. He just has these huge spike weeks. Maybe you can sell him high in Dynasty because of this. That'll be something to remember as we go into the offseason. Adam Thielen, 6 catches, 94 yards on 8 targets. He is clearly the wide receiver 1 here. Not so much clearly because DJ Chark did so well in this, but every week he's leading the team in targets. So definitely a decent option to be thinking of because the Jaguars are a weak pass defense. Tommy Tremble, 4 catches, 59 yards. He's a decent floor play, I think. Steven Sullivan, he had 3 catches for 21. Jonathan Mingo, just the 1 catch for 9. He is only a dynasty play. And the running backs also only getting 1 catch apiece there. Next game, the Lions defeated the Vikings 30-24. A little more dramatic than I was thinking this game would be, but the Lions pulled this one out. They are the winners of the NFC North. Jared Goff, he was 30 of 40, 257 yards, and a passing touchdown. Also had 3 carries for 0 yards. Another guy, like he's definitely in the starting conversation, just not like top of the top. They play the Cowboys next week, and that's a pretty tough matchup, so that's something to keep in mind with Jared Goff. He's going to most likely be in my top 15, but probably the bottom, or definitely the bottom half of that top 15. Jahmyr Gibbs, 15 carries for 80 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. He also had 4 catches for 60 yards on 7 targets. Like one of the best players in Dynasty to have right now. He is going to be really, really good for a long time for this team, as it appears. David Montgomery, 17 carries for 55 yards and a rushing touchdown. He also had 2 catches for 14 yards. He's not going away either. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get more carries next year, but David Montgomery is not going to be ignored whatsoever. Khalif Raymond, he had a carry for 8 yards. He also had 2 catches for 29. Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously we are starting Amon-Ra St. Brown. Even though he's playing the Cowboys next week, you got to play him no matter what the matchup is. 12 catches, 106 yards, and a receiving touchdown of 14 targets is just insane stuff. Jameson Williams, we are not adding him, even though 5 catches, 43 yards is really good. 6 targets, he's getting looked at, but he's going to be up and down as he has been all year. Sam Laporta, 3 catches, 18 yards on 3 targets. Wasn't a great matchup here for tight ends, so Sam Laporta, you still got to start him every week. They got the Cowboys next week. That isn't a tremendous matchup, but still, you got to play Sam Laporta because of what he's done up to this point, regardless of what he did in this game. Josh Reynolds, he had a catch for 16 yards on 4 targets, and Donovan Peoples-Jones, just the 1 catch for 11 yards with the Lions. Nick Mullins, a really interesting game for him. 22 of 36, 411 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He also had a carry for 1 yard. I wonder if they'll put Josh Dobbs in or Jaren Hall because 4 interceptions is a lot, and he had a very costly one at the end of the game too. I just wonder what the conversation is, if they're just going to give up on the season or how they're going to respond from this game going forward. Ty Chandler, 8 carries for 17 yards and a rushing touchdown. The rushing touchdown really helped him in this one because he didn't have any receiving work. As Alexander Madison gets healthier, I wonder if he's going to get more looks. 2 carries for negative 1 yards is bad, but they've shown all year that they want to give this guy the ball, so that's something to keep in mind with Ty Chandler playing next week. Let's see who they have. They have the Packers, so that's a good matchup also. So you probably are going to play Ty Chandler next week. Well, he's kind of on the fringe there of playable and someone you would sit just because of the Madison possibility of him taking carries away there. But Ty Chandler is still a really solid option for next week. Justin Jefferson, 6 catches, 141 yards, and a receiving touchdown on 10 targets. This is more of what we expect from Justin Jefferson. You got to play him next week for sure, no matter who the quarterback is. KJ Osborne, I don't think we should play him, but this is awesome. 5 catches, 95 yards, and a receiving touchdown on 7 targets. TJ Hawkinson, we're of course playing him. 4 catches, 58 yards isn't great, but he's been awesome all season. Brandon Powell, he had 3 catches, 53 yards. Interesting dynasty play, I think, Brandon Powell. He's got some twitchiness and some explosion with his game. Josh Oliver, he had a catch for 33 yards. Johnny Munt had a catch for 23. And C.J. Ham, the fullback, had a catch for 6. And Jordan Addison, super disappointing stuff here. 4 targets, but only 1 catch on 2 yards. It's going to be up and down with him. He's been good all year, but with this quarterback situation being shaky, Justin Jefferson commanding so many targets, Jordan Addison may not be the best play as far as trying to win a championship is concerned in fantasy because it could just turn out bad like it did this week. Next game, the battle for North Florida. The Buccaneers beat the crap out of the Jaguars 30-12. Trevor Lawrence coming in here with a litany of injuries, 17-29, 211 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions. Also the team's leading rusher, 4 carries for 29 yards. This was just a rough game. It's a good matchup, but still, Trevor Lawrence had so many injuries going into this game. We just got to keep that in mind going forward, that if somebody has as many injuries as he has, the matchup doesn't really matter all that much, even though Lawrence has been pretty good here as of late. C.J. Beathard, 11-15, 94 yards, and a passing touchdown. He also had 1 carry for 6 yards. I think Lawrence is playing next week. He was just playing so bad that they had to bench him at a certain point. Travis Etienne, pretty disappointing here. 6 carries, 12 yards. He also had 3 catches for 19. His upside is going to be pretty limited because the efficiency hasn't really been there as far as carrying the ball. So just disappointing there, but he remains one of the few workhorse backs in the entire league. Because Dearness Johnson, he only had the 1 carry for 2 yards. No receiving work for him, and Calvin Ridley had a carry for negative 12. But he also had 6 catches, 90 yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. So awesome stuff here. With Zay Jones out and Christian Kirk out, they're just going to be feeding Ingram and Ridley all day. Ingram had 10 catches, 95 yards on 15 targets. So definitely fire up Evan Ingram next week. Really, regardless of matchup, if Zay Jones is out again, they're playing the Panthers too. So, I mean, they're a pretty tough pass defense, but I think Evan Ingram is still somebody you want to play. Elijah Cooks, awesome to see him get more involved. 3 catches, 38 yards on 3 targets. Love Elijah getting involved. Tim Jones, 3 catches, 32 yards on 5 targets. Parker Washington, I think he's a safe drop. 2 catches, 19 yards on 4 targets. I think in the slot they're going to prioritize Evan Ingram over Parker Washington since Christian Kirk is out. And Jamal Agnew also had a catch for 12 yards on 4 targets. Baker Mayfield, he's been playing really well here lately. 26 of 35, 283 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He also had 5 carries for 5 yards. Baker, he's on absolute fire right now. It wasn't like the best game in the world for him, but, we'll absolutely take this 20 fantasy points. Let's see here. Who's he got next week? He's got the Saints. So, Mike Evans probably going to be shut down if Marshawn Lattimore is out there. Probably going to be a Chris Godwin game, but still, Baker Mayfield, he had a good game against the Saints earlier this season, so I would still be firing up Baker Mayfield if you've been using him recently. Rachaad White continues to not be efficient on the ground, but he just adds up fantasy points. 20 carries, 39 yards is just atrocious efficiency, but the rushing touchdown, he also had 6 catches for 38 yards on 7 targets, so got to play Rachaad White no matter what the matchup is at this point because he's been just that good. Chase Edmonds, really only somebody you want to add if something were to happen to Rachaad White, but he had 10 carries for 25 yards in this one. Chris Godwin, he had a carry for 1 yard. Also had 6 catches for 78 yards and 11 targets. He's going to stay getting targets. He's been on fire here the last few games, and they're playing the Saints now where they're pretty much Mike Evans' kryptonite, so Chris Godwin should have a big game. Definitely play him next week. Evans was awesome, though, as he continues to be. 7 catches, 86 yards, 2 receiving touchdowns on 8 targets. He's been so good. Even though he's playing the Saints, you still got to consider playing Mike Evans. But just keep in mind, this has been his kryptonite the entire year, or his entire career, I should say. This Marshawn Lattimore and Saints matchup. Trey Palmer, 4 catches, 42 yards, and 6 targets. Interesting dynasty play because Godwin and Evans have had injury issues in the past. Payne Durham, he had a catch for 25 yards, the rookie from Purdue. David Moore, he had a catch for 7, and K. Dotton also had the catch for 7. It's going to be interesting to see who emerges, Payne Durham or K. Dotton, as the starting tight end next year. Next game, the Bears defeated the Cardinals 27-16. I think Matt Eberflus is going to keep his job, or at least he should. Kyler Murray, 24-38, 230 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He also had 5 carries for 32 yards. Kyler Murray's floor is so high. You got to, he's going to be middle of the top 10. He's definitely a top 10 quarterback every week, in my opinion. The Eagles are a pretty easy matchup for quarterbacks as well. So fire up Kyler Murray next week for your championship games. James Conner, 12 carries for 45 yards. Let's see here. He was also the team's leading receiver. He had 5 catches for 67 yards and a receiving touchdown. I knew he had a bunch of receiving work here. 5 catches, 5 targets, Not a whole lot of target volume, but he's just putting together work here recently, getting touchdowns left and right. So, got to fire up James Conner. The Eagles are a pretty tough run defense, but still, he's just been finding the end zone lately, so you got to put him in there. Amari DiMercado, he's not really going to have value unless something were to happen to Conner. So, just the 2 carries for 10 yards for him. Also had 7 catches for 40 yards, so really interesting stuff there. I just wouldn't count on that production. Just a lot of running back catches here in this one. Interesting stuff here. But James Conner getting 5 catches, 67 yards, and then Amari DiMercado getting 7 catches and 40 yards. That's crazy stuff. Rondale Moore, he had a carry for 6 yards. He also had 2 catches for 30 yards. It's just baffling that they haven't been using him more. Greg Dortch, he's been really emerging lately. 2 catches, 45 yards, and a receiving touchdown. He also had 5 targets. Trey McBride, this is why you play him every week, because of the volume. 8 targets, ties for the lead. He also had 6 catches, 31 yards is disappointing. No touchdown, but still, you got to play him every single week. Elijah Higgins, he had 2 catches for 17 yards on 3 targets. And Michael Carter not able to haul in his only target. Michael Wilson had 4 targets, not able to catch any of them. Shocking stuff there. He's more of a dynasty player than someone you want to think about playing next week, even though there is a good matchup. Hopefully Hollywood Brown can come back next week too. Justin Fields, 15 to 27, 170 yards. He had a passing touchdown and an interception. He also had 9 carries for 97 yards and a rushing touchdown. The rushing is what keeps his value up high. Another guy, Kyler Murray, Justin Fields, you got to play him. Just because their upside is so high and their floor is so high. The Falcons are a pretty good team to throw against too, so I think, yeah, you got to fire up Justin Fields. Khalil Herbert taking over the backfield in this one. This is why I was saying in the live on Instagram before these games got started, you just can't trust Chicago running backs because it looked clearly like they were going to give Rashawn Johnson the ball more last game. Now Khalil Herbert's getting it again. 20 carries, 112 yards, and a rushing touchdown. He also had a catch for 9 yards. I just wouldn't play any of these guys, especially if Deontay Foreman plays again next week. Just stay away from Chicago running backs because it is an absolute mess. 9 carries for 37 yards for Rashawn Johnson. He also had 3 catches for 16 yards, so not horrible production there. Velus Jones, he had a carry for 4 yards, wasn't able to haul in his only target. Cole Kmet, look out for injury news on him, but 4 catches, 107 yards, and 5 targets is awesome, especially for a tight end. Absolutely in consideration to play next week. If you got him, there's probably not going to be very many tight ends better than him in the rankings. DJ Moore, 3 catches, 18 yards, and 6 targets. He may get the A.J. Terrell shadow next week, but still, this team clearly prioritizes getting him the ball. This is a total stinker, but I still think you got to play DJ Moore every week just because of how highly he's prioritized here. Robert Tonyan, he had a catch for 14 yards after Cole Kmet went down. Darnell Mooney, just the 2 catches for 5 yards on 4 targets. And Mercedes Lewis getting involved. He had a touchdown catch for only 1 yard. Next game, we had 2 Super Bowl previews this week. We have the 49ers and the Ravens game tonight. And then we have this one, the Dolphins squeaking out this one 22-20 against the Cowboys. Dak Prescott, 20 of 32, 253 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He also had 5 carries for 25 yards. Dak, he's been really good here lately. This isn't a tremendous game, but we'll absolutely take it. They have the Lions next week. The Lions coming off of winning the division too. They may be taking it a little easy, so definitely play Dak next week. Tony Pollard, 12 carries for 38 yards. Also had a catch for 5. Super disappointing stuff here. Kind of coming back down to earth after he had 3 or 4 weeks of really solid production. CeeDee Lamb, 2 carries for 14 yards. He also had 6 catches, 118 yards, and a receiving touchdown on 10 targets. Clearly, we are playing CeeDee Lamb every single week, regardless of matchup. But they have an awesome matchup next week, too. So, got to find a spot for CeeDee Lamb in your lineup, in your championship lineups. Jalen Tolbert, 2 catches, 51 yards. Brandon Cooks, he had 2 catches for 14 yards and a receiving touchdown. Hunter Lepke had a catch for 8. Kevontae Turpin had a catch for 4. Luke Schoonmaker had a catch for 4. Michael Gallup had 2 catches for 4. Jake Ferguson, 4 catches, 45 yards on 8 targets. That's okay tight end stuff. We just would expect a little more. Would have been nice to get a touchdown, as Jake Ferguson has done multiple times this year. For the Dolphins, Tua Tagovailoa, he was solid. 24-37, 293 yards, a touchdown. He also had 2 carries for -2 yards. Tua, this is another really okay game. We'll take it. He's got the Ravens, another tough matchup next week. So I wouldn't prioritize playing Tua, but it's not the worst fallback option, I suppose. Raheem Mostert, he had most of the carries in this one. 11 carries, 46 yards. He also had a catch for 4. Devon Achane, he had 7 carries for 24 yards. He also had a catch for 7. So those guys continue to be pretty close as far as touches are concerned, but Mostert is getting most of the production here. So I would prioritize Mostert over Achane. Jeff Wilson, he had just the 5 carries for 21 yards. He is younger than I thought he was. He's still in his 20s. So interesting dynasty play Jeff Wilson is, I think, going forward. And Jalen Waddle, looks like he has a high ankle sprain. So that's something to keep in mind next week. If we already had every reason in the world to play Tyreek Hill, but now with Jalen Waddle out, that's going to be even more reason to play him. But he had a carry for 2 yards, also had a catch for 50 on 4 targets before he went out. Tyreek Hill, this is low-end Tyreek Hill, but amazing stuff. 9 catches, 99 yards, 14 targets. We're playing him no matter what the matchup is. Durham Smythe, 5 catches, 56 yards on 5 targets. I don't think we want to play him, even if Jalen Waddle is out, because this isn't an offense that generally prioritizes throwing to the tight end. Cedric Wilson, 3 catches, 42 yards on 5 targets. Robbie Chosen came in and had a catch for 19. Alec Ingold, the fullback, had 2 catches for 12. And Jeff Wilson, getting involved in the passing game, also had a catch for 4. He's been known to get involved in the passing game in the past, too, so something to watch with him. Last game of the night was the Patriots and the Broncos. The Patriots pulled this one out 26-23. Bailey Zappi, 25-33, 256 yards on with 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He also had a carry for 2 yards. He's putting together some decent games here lately. They have the Bills next week. It's an okay matchup, but at the same time, I do not trust playing Bailey Zappi and attaching my championship to this offense in any capacity. So I would definitely avoid playing Bailey Zappi, even though he's had some decent games here lately. Zeke Elliott, 12 carries, 27 yards. He also had 9 catches, 33 yards, and a receiving touchdown. So the receiving work really helping him out in this one. Kevin Harris, interesting that he got so many carries. 7 carries for 21 yards. No receiving work for him, though. So it's still Zeke Elliott all the way if you're going to play a running back here. Really, if you're going to play anybody, I would prioritize playing Zeke, especially I would prioritize playing Zeke if Ramondre is out next week. Tyquan Thornton, he had a catch for 9 yards. He had a carry for 9 yards, also had a catch for 11 yards. Demario Douglas was the leading receiver. He had 5 catches, 74 yards on 8 targets. Another, just a strictly floor play. He's going to get you around 10, 15 points every week. Devontae Parker, 4 catches, 65 yards on 5 targets. If they continue to have the amount of injuries they did, like no Juju in this one, no Hunter Henry, that opened things up for Devontae Parker a little bit. So I still wouldn't go playing Devontae Parker because of this game. Jalen Reagor, he had 2 catches for 33 yards. Even in Dynasty, I think we should be dropping Jalen Reagor. Farrell Brown, he had 2 catches for 25 yards. Mike Gesicki had a receiving touchdown, 2 catches and 15 yards. And Tyquan Thornton adding that catch for 11 yards. Russell Wilson, another guy, very middle of the road. They have the Chargers next week, so that's a good matchup. So he's definitely in the conversation for starting. 25-37, 238 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He also had 4 carries for 20 yards. Like I said, you don't necessarily want to prioritize playing Russell Wilson, but he's definitely a solid starting option next week. Jaleel McLaughlin was the leading rusher, 6 carries, 37 yards. He also had 4 catches for 30 yards. Good to see him get as much work as he did at the beginning of the year in this one. Javonte Williams kind of struggled, 11 carries, 24 yards, but he did have that rushing touchdown that helped him out. 3 catches, but only -5 yards is rough. So I still think we're playing Javonte. The Chargers are a good matchup too, so still got to fire him up. Still think this is his backfield. Samaje Perine, he had a carry for 2 yards in this one. Also had 4 catches for 27. Michael Burton, the fullback, also had a carry for 0. Marvin Mims, the leading receiver, 3 catches, 63 yards on 4 targets. More of a dynasty play. Even though there's a good matchup next week, I still wouldn't play Marvin Mims. Brandon Johnson, same thing. I wouldn't go playing him off of this. 3 catches, 47 yards, and a receiving touchdown. Jerry Jeudy, he had 3 catches, 44 yards on 5 targets. Yeah, even in Dynasty, I'm kind of thinking, maybe, but he's got enough ability to where if he does maybe they trade him and he gets in a better situation. That's kind of what I'm hoping for Jerry Jeudy going forward. Lucas Krull, he had 4 catches for 28 yards and a receiving touchdown. Michael Burton had a catch for 4 yards. Cortland Sutton, not able to haul in his only target. Super disappointing stuff there. In a good matchup next week, if he's healthy, I think you play him. But this definitely hurted you if you started him in this one. Hopefully it didn't kick you completely out of the playoffs, which is, I'm assuming, happened to a lot of people because of Cortland Sutton in this one. Adam Troutman wasn't able to haul in his only target either. So really what we want to take away from here is look for health updates on Cortland Sutton because this is absolutely miserable. He is the main guy I would prioritize playing from Denver next week. Also Russell Wilson if you need a quarterback. So that's going to do it for me, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. Follow at We Are Drafting on Instagram. I'll have the Week 17 ads and drops up tonight after the last game is over. So check those out. I'll see you over there. And thank you again so much for watching.